Welcome to the show where we unearth new ways of looking at ever-evolving life around the world, seen from a number of different industries, cultures, and backgrounds. But there's one thing that unites everyone I speak to. They all want to do their part to make the world better in their own unique ways. It's a uniting passion. Whether they're from the commercial world, third sector, or public sector, from the global north or the global south, my name is Philippa White, and welcome to TIE Unearthed. Hello, and welcome to episode 54 of TIE Unearthed. Today I'm speaking with the extraordinary Binca Lebreton, co-founder and director of the Arikambi Research Center in Brazil's Atlantic Forest, where she and her colleagues work to find solutions to the challenges of biodiversity, conservation, and sustainability. She's also a writer and educator who specializes in the environment and human rights, and she spends several months each year on the international lecture circuit, where she's an experienced speaker and broadcaster. Now, this is our second podcast. We've worked with Arikambi since 2009, and we've had a number of projects with them since then, supporting their really important work of making the conservation of the Atlantic forest more attractive than its destruction. Now, the last time we worked with them was last year for TIE Accelerator, and we'll be working with them again starting this month for our Team TIE Leadership Development Program with the London ad agency BBH. And this is news. We didn't know this when we recorded, so it's super exciting. But what we're going to be covering off today is talking about the impact of our last project with them, development since we last spoke and worked together, which was over a year ago, and what they hope to get out of this next program. So there's lots to get stuck into. So throw on those running shoes or grab that favorite beverage, and here's Binca. Hello, Binca. It's so nice to have you with us again. How are you?
Hello, Philippa. It's great to see you. And greetings, everybody from Arikambi in the rainforest. It's great to be with you all, and especially with you again, Philippa.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Binca and I have known each other for a very, very long time.
Ever.
It's amazing. And we sort of keep kind of popping up and having these catch-ups. And I have to say, I always feel like I'm buzzing after talking to you. So I can't tell you how excited I am to be bringing Arikambi to life again and just checking in again to sort of see how things have evolved over the last year. Now, for our listeners who don't know about Arikambi, perhaps you can just tell everyone a little bit about you and Robin and Arikambi and just how the organization came about, because it's such an inspirational story.
Thank you, Philippa. Well, guys, I don't know if you're all familiar with the concept of a midlife crisis. I suspect you are, right? Other people call it a gap year, or, you can have them regularly, and I actually highly recommend them. So this goes back, way back 30 years ago in Washington, D.C. My husband, Robin, was working as a World Bank economist, and we were traveling all over the world, doing good stuff. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm not a scientist. I was actually a concert pianist at the time, which shows that you can, do all kinds of different careers and all kinds of different things in your life. And one day I was playing the piano. I was playing something really complicated, and I was kind of concentrating on it. And Robin came up behind me and muttered something. And I said, yes, as one would. Please go away. I've got to kind of get my fingers around this piece. And afterwards, I discovered that what he'd actually said was, how about we just head off and see if sustainability is really real? How about we leave this golden life in the World Bank and moving around to different countries and continents and raising our kids in different parts of the world? Our kids are now in college so the worst is over financially. And how about we go off and see if sustainability really works? Well, I had sort of said yes because I wanted to get him off my back, right? And then I thought about it and I thought, he's a really nice guy. And, why not? And I thought it would be another 3-year posting kind of thing. We'd been in Nairobi and New Delhi and Jakarta and London and everywhere. The only really, really smart thing we did was we decided to take a life out between lives, right? Because we were in this very kind of self-absorbed life of Washington, D.C., which thinks it's the center of the world and, having a blast, having a wonderful time. So the sensible thing we did was we decided to get in a car and take a 6-month camping trip and drive from Washington, D.C. to Brazil, which was the place that we had chosen to see if this sustainability thing really worked. If you wonder if you can actually drive from Washington, D.C. to Brazil, the answer is no, you cannot. There is not a road through Colombia. And we did sort of toy with the idea of, hacking through the jungles of the Darien Gap, but actually they were full of guerrillas and narco-traficantes and this sort of thing. So we shipped our car. But long story short, we had lived in Brazil, we spoke Portuguese, we found a piece of land that was rainforests and mountains and nice people. And we decided to see if sustainability was really real and if we could set up a sustainable forest farm.
Wow, that is incredible. And I remember when I went there in 2008, well, you just have to understand, there was no electricity. I mean, I went there was electricity, but I could see, it's literally just hills and forest, and they built a house, and then you didn't have any electricity. And running water. You literally started from zero.
I think if we had known, if you knew what was going to happen when you take these crazy decisions, you probably never get out of bed in the morning, right? But, it was just sort of, let's try the great adventure. And when we moved here, it was actually like moving back almost a century in time.
Yes.
In terms of the fact that what we had not realized was that in Latin America and in Latin countries in general, the power is in the city. So if you're in a rural area, that's your problem. So there was a general kind of lack of infrastructure. The roads were terrible, the infrastructure in general was pretty weak. The only really good thing was that it was a wonderful place with wonderful people who were just raring to go and had been living under a military dictatorship for some time. It was, of course, had stopped, but those things cast a really long shadow. So it was interesting for us to be able to just observe what the local community was up to, try and identify things that needed to be done, and then to work alongside them to get going. And one thing led to another, and eventually we decided to start a nonprofit because the forest, this magnificent Atlantic forest in which we live, was severely threatened by smallholder farmers just cutting the remaining patches of forest in order to make a living and be able to send their kids to school. So we decided we'd work with them, we'd set up a nonprofit, no idea how to do it, absolutely no idea, just kind of figured it out by the seat of our pants, and set up an NGO that has been going since 2000. So here we are 22 years later, and we're still going strong.
Still going strong. And actually, that is extraordinary because I was there in 2008. I'm sure, I don't know why I have that in my head, but I'm almost certain that it was 2008. Yes. Yeah, and so that was 8 years after. And I just remember when I was there was still kind of, the internet was, it might even still be like that, but the internet, I remember sort of, we had to go on the hill, we could get it better. Or then I think there was like a generator that kind of got the electricity going. And it really was very rural. Well, it is very rural, but it was like going back in time. And I just remember sitting in your living room and eating beans and it's an extraordinary place and an extraordinary energy, and it really is about it's about impact and action and just finding solutions and just making stuff happen. And there is no is not an option, so we just need to make it work.
Exactly.
Because perhaps you can just summarize what is Airacambi for our listeners.
Well, Philippa, it's taken us a long time to kind of condense our mission statement, but we've now finally come up with what we can do and what we do best, and that's saving forests and changing lives. So basically what that means is ecosystem restoration and working with the local community on education and empowerment.
Yeah, and it's amazing as well because you do involve so much the local community, which is such a big part, obviously, of what international development work is about. And you've really integrated into the local community in such a big way, which is so important. Now, we have worked with you 5 times since our first project in 2009. So obviously after my journey to Airacambi in 2008, obviously super inspired and was like, okay, we need to make this happen. And I think Tiffany was our first ever person to work with you. And as our listeners know, obviously Thai went virtual in 2021. And our relationship has evolved with our 5th Thai Accelerator project, I think. Now, the impact from that experience, if I'm not mistaken, was pretty big. And perhaps you could tell our listeners about your experience with TIE, sort of this last one, which was TIE Accelerator, but also just some stories that stand out with regards to the impact. Because obviously there's the stories of the last ways that we've worked, but what's so exciting is now that we did have to evolve, and we've obviously created the virtual cohort program opportunity. And just for our listeners, we do still have immersive TIE now that the pandemic is slowing down. Things are opening up and people can travel again. So we do have that as an option, but it is really exciting, the virtual option, because it does mean that cohorts can come together. You can have teams come together. You can have people from around your company work together to crack a challenge. And so we had 6 people from around the world actually work together to crack a challenge for Aircam-B. And perhaps you can help our listeners understand what that challenge was, how that experience was, and then what came out of that. Because I think that's what TIE is all about. It's not just about the experience. Yes, that's part of it, but it's about the impact. It's about genuinely making a difference. And I feel excited because I think there was an outcome from that experience.
There was.
So perhaps you could explain that.
Okay, well, first of all, very, very briefly, of the previous 4 TIE programs we'd had individuals, wonderful people who journeyed from their offices in New York or London or wherever into the middle of the rainforest and had to cope with, life on the front line where the internet goes down and it rains all day and you can't get your clothes dry and all this kind of thing, which is one side of living in the rainforest. The other side, of course, is it's absolutely magnificent. And when you feel that you can't take another minute to just go out and look at the trees and take a deep breath, and you understand why you're there. I don't want to put anybody off. When COVID hit us, as it hit everybody else, we had to kind of stop. We hit a brick wall, basically, like everybody, and then had to try and figure out, what do we do? Do we close our doors? How do we pivot? What do we do? And for all of us, it was a huge learning experience. And for Aircam-B, it was actually a magnificent experience that propelled us, into huge growth. And this was very largely due to our TIE Accelerator program. What we wanted to do was, since we decided that closing the doors was not an option, we decided that we're going to have to pivot and we're going to have to grow, right? So the brief to the TIE Accelerator team was help us get from good. We know what we're doing. We've been here 20-something years. We planted lots of trees, educated lots of kids, hosted lots of international volunteers and students, people of all ages, and something like 70 countries. But now we need to get to great. We got to grow. We can't just be content with planting a few thousand trees. We've got to up our game considerably. So that was the brief for this wonderful group from Australia, Philippines, and Europe, and none of whom had ever been here. And over the course of 6 weeks, their brief was to help us figure out a new way of sustainable financing for the NGO and to focus on working with corporates, right? So we wanted to know what we had to offer, how to speak corporate speak, how to create a fascinating brochure that would be delivered to the chief financial officer of a corporation that would immediately grab his attention with the correct mixture of storytelling and facts and, expected outcomes and impact. And over 6 weeks, we created this brochure, this corporate brochure. And then after the end of that TIE program, we kept fiddling with it. I'm a writer, and so I tend to kind of fiddle with things, and that how it is. They're never quite perfect, right? But we worked on this, and it just gave us a whole new kind of worldview about how we could work with other unexpected partners, right? Approximately 6 months after the end of the TIE Accelerator program, while we had this beautiful brochure that was being, constantly sort of tweaked and improved, and we were looking at complex financing models like carbon financing, trying to figure out how many trees, how many dollars, how many tons of carbon, how long it would take. On a clear blue day, out of the clear blue sky, we get this call on the phone. Now, let me just explain that rainforest telephones don't work. They do not work. So if we get a call, it is a miracle. And we got a call from a firm in Silicon Valley saying, we're really interested in supporting you. And do you have something you can send us? And I said, oh, sure. So sat up all night, finally tweaking those wretched figures about carbon credits and dollars and times and so on, and sent it to them. And the outcome was that we got an enormous, for us, donation from this company. We're now in our second year of working with them. They are still supporting us.
Wow.
And that led us to a whole new understanding of how to work with people that we hadn't worked with before, and helped us to understand that we need to really not only up our game, but shore up our bases so that we get more professional, not only at what we do. We know what we do, we know how to do it, but we need help from, business partners to help us improve our business plans, our public relations, and so on. So the impact from that, Philippa, was absolutely immense. And I just want to tell you quickly, guys, that just before COVID, things were, already difficult for us. And we had been planting something like between 5,000 and 8,000 trees a year. Through this accelerator program, we put out a great, big, exciting vision, and that was to plant 1 million trees. Now, you don't go from 5,000 trees to 1 million trees overnight, right? But we figured out how to increase our team, increase our budget. And what we discovered is when you have a big dream, people are interested and they support you.
That's amazing. And how close are you to that? Like, what is the sort of the timeline for reaching?
The time frame is 2030. Over 2021, 22, we're planting 55,000 trees. So we're going to have to scramble to get to the million, but we're on our way to the promised land.
You know what you've said about when you have a vision and when you have that goal and you start talking about it, it's so interesting. I was talking to a coach because Ty is also on a similar journey to Aircambie in the sense that COVID was hard and we're sort of rethinking and regrowing and, what we do works and it's proven. And so we've got some incredible mentors supporting us. One of the things they said was what is success in 10 years time? What is that goal? When you say it, the conversations change. And when you start to kind of, when you have that vision, and it's funny because I hadn't articulated what that goal was in 10 years time. I was sort of looking at kind of the shorter goal. When you articulate that and you've proven yourself over the years, and suddenly people do say, I want to be a part of this. Right. And it's just so exciting. So we are thrilled. I mean, I'm so happy that we were able to help you get to that. And, now that more and more companies and people are realizing just how amazing and inspirational and impactful Aircambie is. How wonderful. Now, we are going to be working with you again this year. That's our plan. Perhaps you could help people understand what's next. So, that's what I also love about Ty is people often question, okay, well, there's only so much we can do in 6 weeks. 6 weeks is such a short amount of time. And what we often say is, well, yeah, I mean, that's actually kind of the point of the program in the sense that, constraints are a wonderful way to be able to unleash potential and show you what is possible in such a short amount of time. But of course, you can't change the world in 6 weeks. But what's beautiful is we are that continuity with the organization. So it's a really intense project. That happens, you create something tangible and amazing for an organization. And then we are that, continuity to then say, okay, once that organization's ready to do it again, okay, we've built that up. Okay, we're ready to go again. And it's sort of this accelerated experience. And then it's like, okay, all systems go. And then it's kind of, okay, let's just live with this for a bit. So we've done Ty Accelerator, and that obviously happened March 2021. So we are hoping to do another project, obviously, this year. So perhaps you can help us just understand what next.
What next, Philippa, is, how do you expand your budget by a factor of 3, within a year or 18 months? And to do that, what do you need to do to really firm up the foundations of everything you do? How do you go from a sort of small or little organization working away in the backwards to an organization that is really taking its place and becoming more and more visible, both nationally and internationally? And what does that look like? What does it look like? What do we need to do now? What do we need to do next year? I think one of the most interesting things that we're working on at the moment is, expanding our planning horizons. So we had normally been planning for a year at a time, plan for 3 years, plan for 5 years. And how do we keep the balance between doing what we do well and making sure that we do it better, and the time that is required to actually make these changes and make this improvement? So that's where we are at the moment. We are looking to literally get to the whole next level, but making sure that nothing gets left behind. Okay.
That's interesting. Okay. So it's very strategic. So it's a strategic kind of build on where you are and what that structure looks like to get you scaled. That's exciting. Yeah, that's exciting. So you've been busy over the last couple of years, and most recently you've been to the Summit of the Americas, if I'm not mistaken. I actually don't know what the Summit of the Americas is. I probably should, but I don't. And I'm sure that our listeners probably don't either. So perhaps you can tell us about this and other updates just from the front lines of working in the area of Brazilian Atlantic rainforest conservation and what that looks like.
Well, Philippa, like most of us, we had to batten down the hatches and stay home basically for nearly 2 years during COVID. And when we were finally kind of released to go, we all set off with kind of new determination and energy, and so exciting to actually to meet people in person again. Zoom meetings are wonderful, but to feel that energy with people. So the Summit of the Americas is a meeting of all the states in the Americas, and it normally happens every couple of years, but it hadn't happened because of COVID. And so it was pulled together in Los Angeles, and it took place a couple of weeks ago. And it was a phenomenal experience. And I think a part of that was that people were so excited to get out and get together. So it included all the countries of the Americas, except 3 countries. There was a little controversy about this because Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba were not invited because it was a meeting of the democracies of the Americas. And so this was a kind of a delicate moment when you have a family party, do you leave out some of the people that you don't agree with? Anyway, that was the decision of the State Department. It was hosted by the State Department in Los Angeles. Every year it goes, or every time it's held, it goes to a different country. And so basically it was a meeting of heads of state, civil society, youth, and corporate leaders. So it was very exciting to have all these different sectors meeting and interacting, right? So I think the main things that came out of it, which excited me, because it's easy to say, well, these are just talking shops, what is going to change? And I know from my own personal experience when I previously was involved in a United Nations intervention bringing a specific human rights case against a specific country to the United Nations, which resulted in significant changes, many more than I would have hoped. So I know that things can happen. And I think on this occasion, everybody was so excited about the chance to get together and talk about issues that had been, of course, discussed previously before the final meeting. And the most important things that struck me was illegal deforestation. So this is very much up our road. How to defend environmental defenders. As this was going on, 2 people were murdered in the Amazon in the environmental defense space. So that was extremely, topical. Talking about the fact that environmental defenders on the front line are up against mafia crime. So that defending the forests includes, the arms trade, the people trafficking trade, the drugs trade. And an interesting outcome for me, because I personally have been involved in this quite significantly and written books about it, was a suggestion that one should be careful how much noise one makes about a specific issue, because by making a noise, one is also putting a target on one's back. And to what extent should one collect that information and then pass it on to a trusted source who may be able to do more about it than, people on the ground? So that was very interesting. There was a huge emphasis on the role of civil society. So that's all of us. We're on the ground. We know better than anybody what's going on. We can react more quickly than governments. And the roles of public sector, private sector, and civil society, and how we interact and how we can think of new ways to do that and make new partnerships and unexpected partnerships. We talked about gender equality. We talked about digital inclusion. So it was a very stimulating week of very interesting conversations. And I think the outcome for the Americas, and this is good news for the Americas, is that by and large, we are the region with the greatest number of democracies. Many of them are under threat, but there are more functioning democracies in the Americas than in other regions of the world. We are the region with the youngest population, and we have a window of opportunity of about 10 to 15 years. We have the technology, we have the training, we have a sort of spirit of, let's do it in the Americas. We need investment, and we need, upskilling, and particularly perhaps language training. And this was a call for corporations and civil society to come together, we can both react fast and we can both do things. What needs to be done in the Americas is investment and training. And I thought that was a very encouraging outcome because generally speaking, in sort of geopolitics, the Americas and the Southern Americans tend to be overlooked. And this was, a resounding affirmation that, we have a lot going for us. We need to work together. We need to make these new partnerships. We need to attract these new investments, and that the Americas are a region that really has a huge potential. So that was very
that's really encouraging, isn't it? Yeah, and the fact that you are on the front lines of that also opens up so much opportunity for more support, actually, and seeing that why you being there doing what you're doing is just so important. I think what would be really interesting, I asked you this question the last time, and I'd be interested to know if you have a different answer, but obviously, the environment is on everybody's mind. More, you've been living with this and understand, Robin and you, gosh, this is the area that you've given your life to, and you've been doing it for 30 years. These climate change discussions and just the reality of what's happening. I just wonder if there's anything that you can tell our listeners that maybe they don't know. What keeps you up at night, but also hope?
Well, Philippa, this was like Rainforest Week. We seem to have Rainforest Weeks or environmental weeks or forest weeks all the time, but this was big time Rainforest Week. And I was involved in some very, very interesting conferences that were also hosted by Zoom. God bless Zoom and the internet that enables us to do these things. And there was a particularly, to me, interesting keynote speech given by a very distinguished fellow of Cambridge University, talking about the whole climate situation right now. And he just brought my attention to a couple of things I hadn't really thought about before, which I think are very interesting. I'd love to share with you. The first is the oceans, a little bit close to you in Recife, but a little bit far from us in the rainforest. We're about 100 kilometers away. And the fact that the oceans are, a tremendously important global good and completely unregulated. Nobody pays for using the oceans. All our stuff is bought, from A to B across the oceans. And, how we really need to be regulating the oceans, which I hadn't thought of before. When it came to forests, he talked about the fact that there is forest regulation, the fact that the most important areas of biodiversity are in the tropical zones where we are, also the greatest areas of poverty and potential for, social disruption. And while there is serious interest paid to the question of forest maintenance, most of the incentives go to governments rather than to the communities on the ground. So how can we make sure that, that this reality is changed? I think that he also talked about the carrying capacity of the world, of the planet. We know that at the moment we need 1.6 planets in order to supply us with our voracious demands as a society. And we're talking about the richer countries, of course. And that if we halved our GDP in the OECD countries, which is currently $40,000 a head, if we halved that to $20,000 a head, the carrying capacity of the planet would improve to 1.2, we'd still be exceeding the carrying capacity. But these are all things that it's very interesting to be able to get a kind of global viewpoint on all these. I think the things that give me hope really are the Greta Thunbergs and the young people all over the world who are determined to cut the cackle and get on and do stuff. And that is the other thing that we do in Irukandji that we find so important. One, we're doing the actual on-the-ground ecosystem restoration. But the other thing is working with local youth or with international youth, because we need to involve everybody in this exciting project, which is like keeping the world alive for our children and our grandchildren.
And I agree. I feel that too. TIE is all about helping to arm people with the potential that they have to also be drivers of change. We don't need to wait for someone else, or it's not about the other person. It's we all have that potential, and it's just a matter of doing it, seeing it, realizing it, bringing other people along for the journey. It's impossible to do it on your own, and just doing it. And I think the time is now.
And Philippa, I think the digital inclusion piece, which I hadn't focused on so much before, there's talent everywhere. It's not just in the big cities. There's talent everywhere. We relatively recently had a contact from a student who had been through our kids education program 15 years ago. Wow. She graduated from Harvard She is working, at a large investment, office in New York. And when I visited her father's house, which was a very simple sort of farmhouse, very bare, not very much there, on the wall was a little framed certificate to say that this girl had been a part of our education program. And her father, he said, she's living in America now, And I said, yes. And he said, is it true they speak another language there? Yes, it's true. So to think of that girl, coming from that background, and to see how far she's come, I think that's encouraging. The idea that there's talent everywhere.
And that's also why it is so important, again, your work with the community, because I think sometimes people feel, it's sort of, even with Thai, the North coming to save the South. And it's not that. It's actually, it always has been a very equal playing field. And actually, there's a lot that the North doesn't know and the South does. And there's, knowledge that can be shared, and it's about the win-win. And if you treat it like that, and you sort of ask the questions, listen to the answers, work together, empower, and then bring each other up, then that's where change happens. And obviously your involvement with the local communities and getting people involved with the AirCanB, it's education. It comes down to education and opportunity and empowerment. And I think once you unlock that potential, anything is possible.
Absolutely.
So we are wrapping up and we're coming to the end of the podcast, but I'm just wondering, what are you working on at the moment that you think our listeners would find interesting? Or is there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to tell our listeners?
We are looking at the huge amount of potential that's out there. We are looking at things we've never really stopped to think about before, like artificial intelligence.
Yes.
I spend a lot of time translating, endless documents, and, it takes time. And Google Translate, for example, didn't used to be very good, but it's now much better. And I've suddenly had this blinding revelation that if I put, a 25-page document through Google Translate and look at it, it will take me 15 minutes just to tweak it, and it will save me hours and hours of work. So what we're looking at the moment is we have a model of forest restoration, ecosystem restoration on the one hand, and we're getting much better at figuring out how to do it, how much it costs, different ways of including, the community in it. What we're working on now is in parallel, a way of monitoring that. So we need to be able to tell the stories and give the stats and show our donors and our supporters what we're doing and how we can make it work. And we also need it for our own benefit. We need to know how we can do things better. And it's only by collecting all that material that we can do that. So we're working on a forest monitoring program that works not only with, satellite imagery and GIS, LiDAR in the future when that becomes a little more accessible. It's still very expensive in Brazil. Boots on the ground soundscapes so we can hear what's going on in the forest, motion sensitive cameras. And what we want to do is be able to make a package so that here's how you can monitor and report on, both for other people, but also for yourself, on how your ecosystem restoration program is actually working. So do it on the one hand, and then show it on the other hand. Show and tell, I guess. And beginning to work with companies that are, for example, able to analyze the data that we collect in a heartbeat using artificial intelligence. So it's a whole new world that is accessible to us, and we just have to figure out how to navigate our way around it. Right?
Yeah, gosh. And, again, back to my 2008 experience when I was with you. And I remember GIS, I felt that was sort of quite new at the time, because I remember Robin talking about GIS. No, it's amazing. We can map, like we map through, I don't even know, was it with drones? I mean, I have no idea. Was that happening at that time? I can't even remember. But anyway,
we had drones then.
We didn't have drones then, did we? So I don't even know how you did that. But Robin would sit with me, and he's so kind, and he's sort of explaining it. It's like totally over my head. It's like, I don't know. But it's amazing. You guys sort of feel like you're at the front lines of so much change and technology and ways to impact the world. Oh, Binka, you did it again. I'm buzzing. I adore our conversations. I can't thank you enough for your time and just your work, which is so important. And I just feel so honored to have had Mark Wade put us in touch so I can be a part of this journey and to provide that to other people as well.
What you're doing is really, really important. And we just want to thank you for your help and encouragement and seeing that little glimpse of potential that perhaps we didn't see ourselves and helping us to pull it all together. So thank you, Philippa. Thank you, Ty.
Yay! Mutual love. Good. Well, until the next time, Binka.
Thank you, my love. Lots of love to everyone and greetings from the rainforest. Bye now.
Hey everyone, this is Philippa again. I hope you enjoyed listening. Now this is your chance to get involved with TIE. If you work in the commercial world, whatever your profession, your position, or your experience, then TIE could be for you. You may have been in business for decades, but have always felt there's another way. Or you may just have a few years experience, but want to do more. Equally, if you want to create game-changing employees and see your company impact the world, we've got you covered. TIE has never been more necessary than right now, and you can be a part of it. Reach out to me at philippa@theinternationalexchange.co.uk and I can tell you more. Or join the TIE Accelerator info session for more information. apply.tieaccelerator.com. Better leaders, better companies, better world. I'm your host, Philippa White. This podcast has been co-produced by Berna Vieira and me, music by Berna Vieira, and artwork by Kelps Verheijs. I hope we'll meet again soon.